You know, that was kind of the theme song back in the day for us. You know, we didn't fuck with Elvis, and he was way past his prime, and he died, and we really didn't care. So the things we learned about him, how he stole black music, mimicked it, stole it, never really gave people their proper credit, basically, unless he was cornered. He was what he was. But then when I saw this picture and I uploaded it on Facebook, shared it, whatever you want to call it, he kind of came back into my mind. You know, I'm looking at him sitting at this counter. I guess it was in a train station. It's a diner in a train station in 1956. So we balls deep in Jim Crow. This was in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And it's a black woman who is waiting for her meal to be prepared. I believe at these times they said you couldn't sit in these diners. She was probably fortunate to be able to actually even come in and get a meal. No telling how they prepared it. You know, I'm not going to even speculate on that because I'll just get more pissed off. The fact that she wasn't allowed to sit down even though she was giving them her hard-earned money. She wasn't able to eat in the same place as Elvis Presley. She wasn't able to eat the same place as those white women that are on the other side of the counter. That white man that looks like he's about to pay for his bill. You can see right next to Elvis, there's a seat. I think that was illegal for a black person to sit next to a white person at that time. Looks like there's a seat on the other side of Elvis where he could have slid over and gave the black queen a seat. You know, it looks like she's traveling. I mean, she's at the train station diner. She's traveling. So she's in the same situation that Elvis was in. I don't think Elvis would have went to a train station diner if he wasn't riding the train. So he was in the same position that she was in. Kind of. So when I look at this shit, you know, it's just a matter that I just always have to remember. Yeah, he never meant shit to me. And he never meant shit to a lot of black people for shit like this. You know, I don't know if she was a fan of his music. And I know that there's going to be some people that say, you know, this is Jim Crow and this was hard on this and this. See, but I dug a little bit deeper into this. Knowing it was 1956, I wanted to see where Elvis was in his career. And he had the #1 album in the country. Anybody knows anything back then, if you had the #1 record, if you were a boxing champion, if you were a national champion, a world champion in sports, you were like King Kong. You could conquer pretty much anything. You could do anything. If Elvis told them that he would leave that diner if they didn't let that woman sit down, they'd have let her sit down. He had that type of power in 1956. So for anybody that's going to take that approach that, you know, what was he supposed to do? A motherfucker who had just released 8 singles, I believe it was, that year and stayed on #1 for over 10 weeks. The first rock and roll album to ever be #1, I think he could have did more than what he did here. He could have did more. He could have slid over. He could have offered her a seat. He could have offered her a seat next to him. He could have broke the law. See, this is how you change shit. But since he didn't, and I think the caption said he was sitting there waiting for his eggs, I just have to say the same thing. And see, I'm going to take the copyright hit. I know I'm going to get a copyright hit on this shit, you know, because they're going to say I'm trying to advance or do something to somebody's music. This fucking song is 30 years old. All the money has been made off of it that's going to be made. If I ever meet the great Chuck D, I'll let him know. Hey, bro, I wasn't trying to make money off your shit. I was just, kind of following up on what you said when you wrote this song. He was a hero to most. Elvis was a hero to most. He was a rock and roll singer, but he was a hero to most. But he didn't mean shit to me. Nothing. And looking at this picture and seeing him let this woman just stand there, she looks like she's tired. She's weathered. I mean, you got to understand, pretty much any black person back in the day, this age was weathered. She looks like she'd been through some shit. And for him not to turn around and offer his seat, because I know he would do that if she wasn't black. Absolutely. Elvis was a ladies' man. He would have been a perfect gentleman. But because of the times, I guess, they would say, no, he couldn't do that. Well, I know black people did buy his music. I didn't know a lot of black people with his music, but I know black people did buy his music. Black people did go to his shows. He was part of Rock and Roll Reviews where there was other black acts on his card. So I know black people did dance to his music. I mean, hell, it was black music. He stole so much music from black people, they just forgot. They just basically make a song, he'd steal it, make it a hit, and they kept moving. But I don't give a fuck about his musical career. This is what I'm focused on. I'm focused on the fact that he was able to sit there and not move a muscle, to let this woman sit down, to not let her wait for her meal that she wasn't able to eat in that same diner he was because of her skin color. So if you ever have anything to say to me, make sure you're looking at it from both points, both sides, because that's what I did here. I said, well, what could he have done? He was young, he might not have that much power. But then when they said it was 1956, I knew he hit somewhere right around the early to mid 50s. But I didn't realize that it was 1956 was the year that he had about 8 songs on the chart and he had the #1 album, the first rock and roll album to ever go #1. I didn't realize that he had that type of power. So him waiting for his specially made eggs, I'm sure they made his eggs special. He was Elvis. He was the #1 rock and roll singer in the world. And him not making space for that black woman just lets us know our problems didn't start with Donald Trump. They may continue with Joe Biden. And they didn't even start with Elvis Presley. But when they start trying to change things around for this group and that group, we just always have this to look back at. We couldn't sit where they sat just to eat a meal. And I'm sure if this was a freestanding building, she probably would have been standing outside the back with the German Shepherd at the outhouse that black people had to use. If they allowed us to actually get a meal from there, we'd have to go use the bathroom and pick up our food in the same location, back by where their dog laid. I hope I don't see no pictures about John Wayne. One love.